Welcome to Strategize Your Business Online, the live design for entrepreneurs like yourself who are looking for a dose of business inspo and ideas to grow your business in the online space. My name is Dee Boswell-Buck, and I'm the digital marketing strategist of Boswell-Buck Creative Consulting. I would like to take a moment to introduce my guest. Landscape designer Joanne Shaw is the owner of Down2Earth Landscape Design. She has spent the past 15 years designing landscapes in Durham Region, Ontario, Canada, for wonderful homeowners, established local nurseries, and trusted contractors. Joanne is passionate about creating landscapes and outdoor living spaces for real people with busy lives. Her focus is on helping people design a beautiful, functional outdoor space, one that reflects your personality and helps create maximum curb appeal to increase the value of your home. Joanne is the co-author of Down the Garden Path, a step-by-step guide to your Ontario garden, and she is the co-host of Down the Garden Path podcast. Joanne, welcome to the live. How are you today?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
I am so thankful that you're here. So, as usual, I have guests on, and the guests are business owners. Sometimes the
Mhm.
guests are my friends. Joanne is my friend,
That's right.
and
I'm both.
yes, she's a business
Yeah.
owner and my friend. She's a business owner who has some really great information. Like I do digital marketing, but she wows me with like some of the techniques that she puts into place, not to add too much pressure to you, Joanne. And I know I gave you that wonderful intro, but I would love to know if you can start off by telling us with who you are and what is it that you do?
All right. Yes, it was a beautiful intro. Thank you very much. So, I'm Joanne Shaw. I'm a landscape designer and I help people with their landscapes, which can be as simple as a front garden, back garden, or as far as an outdoor kitchen and a pool area. So it involves both the softscaping, I would call, gardens, and then hardscaping like walkways, patios, pools, that type of thing. And I think homeowners want to struggle with they know what they want to do, but they don't know how to get it all done. And the proper order of things sometimes is a factor. And it can be overwhelming, especially because even I have gotten help for my own home because even though I know too much and there's too many plant choices. And so I feel like I can offer clients that really neutral um, perspective to really help them plan their landscapes. And yeah, so I think that's what I love doing. I love helping people.
I would love to know, Joanne, like how did you get into this field of landscape design?
It was actually kind of by accident. We bought our first house after we were married, and we bought it in. I can tell this story. We bought it in the fall, a late fall, like end of October, and moved in January. And this was like 25 years ago. And we moved in, and then spring came, and all these gardens. So the previous owner had all these gardens, and I didn't know what to do. So of course we rototilled all of them. Made mistakes, took out all what I now know to have been very nice, perennial, lovely perennial gardens, put in, things that the nursery suggested putting in, which were not necessarily the best things.
Mm.
And, and then we kind of had to figure it out from there. And I really realized that and I had a lot of help from my mother-in-law. I had a lot of help from reading books, and I remembered things. Like, so I would remember the name of the plant and where it needed to grow more than I remembered what I was doing at work the day before. So I found I really, really was loving it. Kids came along, and I was helping neighbors with their gardens, and then I took a part-time job at a local nursery after joining a local garden club. The president of our local garden club was also the assistant manager at the nursery. So she's like, just come. So it was a great learning place to learn about more about plants. And then I decided to learn more at school. Like, having two kids now under 5, I went back to Ryerson at the time and did a continuing ed landscape design certificate. So it was definitely a very gradual process. And I can say, I guess it was a hobby that turned into a passion and a business.
Nice. So did you go to, so what happened in the meantime, Joanne, was that I kind of lost you for a little bit, but it's still coming through. But I wanted to know, I don't know if you shared this, like, did you go to school for this?
I did, yeah, I went to Ryerson. So Ryerson had I was looking at the time, this was 18 years ago, trying to find something in Durham region or that was nearby, and there wasn't a lot. So downtown, I started doing night school. So I did one course. So you had two little kids at home, so I had a sitter from, come for an hour between, when my husband got home and I drove downtown once a week. And so, yeah, and I completed that. Was at the time it was 8 courses. I believe now it's only 6, but and the change it keeps changing. But yeah, so I completed a landscape design certificate and continued to work for that nursery. I was working in the store doing, when people would bring in remember the old 4x6 photos of gardens,
Yeah.
and we'd have to do like in-store garden plan photos. And then the outside designer left, and so I joined and started visiting people's homes and helping them, in 1 hour consultations, do garden plans. And then it just grew from there. I learned some software. Shout out to Dynascape, which is a great product that has really helped me expand my business. So it's a CAD drawings program for landscape designers and architects. So all of the tools are there for us to create the plans. So yeah.
So was it difficult launching your business?
It was very gradual, I think. I think it's been difficult to grow the business, to some degree, because it's always changing. And I think, people still think of you as just, oh, you just know gardens. And I'm like, well, no. And I always have to say, well, no, I can do all of it, to a point. I don't design decks or do anything, large grading plans or anything like that. So I think growing the business and finding the niche and having people really understand what I do and the importance of starting with a plan. I think I have a lot of homeowners where they kind of reach out to me in the middle of their process, because they realize they're stuck or something's gone wrong, and they always say, I wish we'd started with a plan and we would have done
Uh,
things so much differently. And and that's, oh, it's good to hear, but it's hard to hear too, because I wish people would start with the plan. And that's always my motto: is great landscape
yeah,
start with a great plan.
I was about to say
Yeah.
that. That's your tagline.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I remember, like, my family, like, reached out to you in 2020.
Mhm.
And, so 2020, I'll just bring it up briefly, but, the pandemic, it was March 2020. And we just didn't know what was going to happen. Like, it was like
Right.
lockdown. You couldn't go to the store whenever you wanted. It was iffy about whether or not you could walk on the road and things like that.
Yeah.
And we were all at home working. My daughter's at school at home, and we're like, what's summer gonna look like? Like, are we
Mhm.
gonna be stuck at home? Like, we learned that we could head outdoors later on, but at that time it was like, what the heck is going to happen?
Yeah.
And you know I did spend more time, like most people did. I spent more time online. So I mean, I do digital marketing and I'm really good at managing my time, but I was like scrolling a lot more because there's more
Yeah.
time to do that, in a sense. And I came across your Instagram post. So I don't know if you remember, like, your Instagram post, you were not in it, but your boots were in it. Well, you were
Yeah.
you were in your boots.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I think you took a picture. So you put the phone towards your boots, and it was like kind of muddy grass because it was like late March, early April. And your social media posts said that I don't have to come into your home, right? I could just like reach out. I'll just go to your yard or your curb. I'll do the measurements and then we'll get online on Zoom. And it was like sold, because we didn't know like
Yeah.
what COVID was like and things like that.
Mhm.
And we were trying to be, just didn't want to get it. He didn't want to be around people. It was like the
Right.
lack of knowledge. So, yeah, I reached out to you, and I wanted to mention that before I go on because, often people say, I don't know if I should share anything on social media, or what is
Mm.
it that I should share on social media. And for you, I mean, there was nothing blooming yet, but
Mhm.
it was awesome how you were getting people to think about what their garden was and also how you could do it safely. So,
Yeah.
once you did that, we were able to reach out. So I just want to say to everybody that, if your business, if you're wondering if you should be on social media, there's so many platforms. Definitely share your business out there because it does get business.
Yeah, it really does. And that was an important time because it was a catch-22 in the sense that you weren't allowed to see people, but yet people wanted to be outside and enjoying their space, their outdoor living space, and some needed some love, right? Or some people needed, to make improvements or things that they'd been putting off, and now it became more of a priority. So it was great for people to realize that I didn't have to, I could do my work outside while they were inside, and we could. And I'm still presenting. My clients love it when I present designs on Zoom, and the CAD, and I share my CAD. It used to be, bringing big printouts of paper and pencil and marking them up and going home and making the changes and going back again. And now they can, we make the changes together. One of my passions is to be very collaborative with my clients, and being able to share Dynascape with them right over Zoom, right over the computer is perfect.
Yeah. So when people reach out to you, Joanne, do they usually reach out for like really large projects, or is it for things that are small? Like, what are the types of, if you can name a couple of types of projects that people reach out to you for?
Mhm. It's varied, really. I had a consult with someone this morning with a new build, and so they need to know where the gardens are going to go, and they have some grading issues at the front step. Sometimes it's someone who's been in there. A neighbor of mine actually today, they finally took down a 30-year-old blue spruce that wasn't healthy out their front yard, and so now they've got this massive gap in their front yard, and they need to know what to do. So sometimes it's new people that are just starting out with a new build, and sometimes it's something as drastic as that, where it's an existing home and they want to make sure the curb appeal is still good, but they've lost their tree. Or it's a backyard where the deck is old and it needs to come down, and what should they do differently? Um, you know,
Right.
Life transitions, some people are planning for yards for their kids. Some people are planning for more like outdoor entertainment spaces that are more adult friendly now that the swing set can be gone, and things like that. Yeah. And I think a lot of people also are looking at less lawn.
Yeah.
So, lawn can be very high maintenance, and tree roots, and lots of contributing factors there. Although everybody wants the shade of trees, but the trees do add some dilemmas sometimes. So yeah, so outdoor rooms more with patios and decks and different things like that. So I would say it's very varied that I get a lot of different requests, which is what I love. Every day is different. Every client's different.
Yeah. I'm wondering if people have any myths when it comes to working with you. So I'll swing back to us. Like, we
Mm.
reached out to you, and I remember saying to my husband, like, we'll just get the design. And yes, we're gonna do we'll do the backyard on our own. So you met with us, well, you met with me on Zoom, and I was like, okay, great, thanks. And and we're gonna do it on our own. And what I loved about what you did, you're like, okay. But just to let you know, you have to like remove the dirt and things like that. And I think that, we thought that we had a lot of time. So I like we're much more educated with the fact
Mhm.
that, and overall, I'm talking about society, just because you're working from home doesn't mean that you have more time. So
Right.
this was so new to us that we're like, we're working from home, we're going to do it all ourselves. But I really appreciated that you dispelled that myth about if we're going to have a lot of time, and you broke things down for us about the
Mhm.
fact that dirt needs to be removed. We got to remove out the old stone and bring it in. And is that something that we would be able to do?
And disposal. Like, I think so
Ah,
a lot of people realize they have to remove the sod, 'cause you wanted new sod as well. So it was a
yes,
garden and you wanted new sod. So people are like, "Oh, we can tear up this old sod and go to this grocery store, the corner store and buy sod and put it back down again." And yeah, in theory, yes, but but the removal process is very labor intensive. But still, yeah, can be done. But the disposal. So it's not like they can those that sod can be put in like paper bags at the curb. It needs to be disposed of properly and usually needs a truck or a trailer or something like that. So it something that seemed like a small project very quickly became a big one. Now, some people have that friend with a trailer and that's not a big deal. Or they're, let's say, on a country property where they can kind of dump the old grass in the forest or something like that. So sometimes it can be a DIY project, but not for everybody. And
yeah.
it wasn't, and I knew it wasn't for you.
It was not. And in terms of like the time to get it done, and when I went back and I spoke to my husband about it, it was like, we want to enjoy this as soon as possible. We don't want
Yeah.
to use the summer, working out in that hot sun. I know some people do it, but I do know that we don't have the patience to do that. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, a question that I have for you is that, well, first of all, are you busy during certain times of the season? And the fact that you'll do maybe a small or medium or large project. So I'm going to take us for instance, like you did our backyard, and then your clients, like they have this large project done. So how is it that you stay top of mind? Like, how often do they circle back for the next project?
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a good question. So I did something which I didn't realize how good it would be, but I did it out of necessity. So as I grew my business, and I had mentioned that, starting the business was easier than growing it, but I realized that I'm putting in gardens for people that are new gardeners, or they are new landscapes, or they don't have that much experience. So they would reach back out with questions, especially, the following subsequent years. And it got to a point where I couldn't respond to everybody. And this was before texting, you know, and so I thought, you know what? If I could be proactive with the information and helping people what they should do and what they shouldn't do and when they should do it, because that's really gardening. As long as you know when to do something, if it's planted in the right place and when you're supposed to do something with it, that takes a lot of guesswork. So I started a newsletter, and my sole monthly newsletter was the sole purpose was to be proactive with the information and just say, okay, this is July. I would send it out the beginning of the month. We're going to work on July's soon. And it would be, this is what you do in your July garden, and broke it down between, lawns, your gardens, your shrubs, your trees, that type of thing, and was very proactive. So I have an amazing open rate, and
Ooh.
so I was doing using it as a tool to communicate and to really avoid all the phone calls and the emails and text messages. But what the side benefit became that I stayed in touch with my clients. So I'm getting repeat, people, because it's not like you don't redo your backyard every other year, right? Your front yard. And sometimes you move homes and that type of thing, which I've gotten. So it has proved to be very useful for my clients, the information they get every month, but it's been great for me to be able to stay in touch. And I was mentioning to you the other day that I had a client who I did their front yard 10 years ago, when I worked for one of those nurseries. And then they called me back about 5 years ago to do their backyard. And now they've called me after he received my June email, my June
Ooh.
newsletter. They literally respond back right to that email, that the
They hit
newsletter.
reply.
They hit reply and they send it right back to me. And they said, we've redone our front, we've made some changes. We'd like you to come back. So I think in 10 years, one client, I've seen them, 3 times. So that's been
Awesome.
wonderful. And I have had a lot of that. And, or, my son has now bought a house, and like you to go and do their property, that type of thing. But it's an investment for sure doing your landscaping. So it's not something you would think that there'd be a lot of repeat business, but there is, you know.
Right. So, how often do you send your newsletter out?
I send it out once a month.
Right. Did you find it was hard to get into that habit? Like I find that um, some people are they're really,
Hmm.
really great at sending out newsletters, or it's a struggle for them.
Hmm.
And there's always like, how often should I send it? But it sounds like you said that you do this every single month. So was that a hard habit to get into?
No, I think the monthly was good because it kind of corresponded to like the things in the garden,
Mm.
like the month I felt like this is okay. And that I broke it down. I tried to break it down, not, you don't have to do this every day, but this month, this is something that you need to think about. I think a lot of I felt guilty only doing once a month, to be honest, because there's so much marketing material or marketing recommendations out there that say you should do it weekly, you should do it bi-weekly, and I just felt like once a month was my bandwidth. And that once a month, it just helped people realize, okay, so now June is here. So this is what I need to do in my garden for June. And I must also say that um, newsletter also spurred on our podcast. It also spurred a segment where we started doing this for 2 years. So I think it was 21 and 22, or 20 and 21. I think we did the last Mondays. We do our podcast is a live radio show on Reality Radio 101. And on Monday nights. So we would do the last Monday of the month, we would do what to do in the garden the next month. So very much similar to the newsletter. And we
Nice.
found, looking back, we did that for 2 straight years, and we were shocked at how popular those shows were. How many, and we barely could keep up with the questions. The one thing about live radio is that we could get the questions live on the air at the same time. And so people really resonated with, okay, this is what I need to do it this month. That's all I need to do. I don't need to worry about all the other things. And then that spurred the book, actually. So because we found, we everybody wants low maintenance. That's the first thing when people call and they say they want low maintenance. And I always joke, I'm like, yes, but I don't use plastic plants. So that's my little comeback kind of thing. There's no such thing as no maintenance, but we can do things to make it lower maintenance. And some of it is just knowing what to do when.
Yeah. I love the fact that, you mentioned that there are so many different ways that you could do marketing and you
Hmm.
could follow all of the marketing gurus who say send out an email every single week or every 2 days. But you honored like yourself. You said you didn't have the bandwidth to do that, but
Yeah,
you're doing something that is consistent. So I hope that, whoever's watching, like they hear that it's just about doing things consistently and also knowing your audience and knowing your product, knowing your services too, because
right.
at the beginning of each month, because I'm sure that September newsletter, the tips are much different than the July 1st.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
So tell me about your book, Joanne. Can you share the title again?
Oh, sure, sure. It is Down the Garden Path, much like the name of the podcast, a step-by-step guide to your Ontario garden. Now, you don't need to live in Ontario. We just, wanted to focus on that in our zone, the gardening zone. So we're kind of 5B. So and we structured it very much that way, where it's March. These are the tips to do in March. These are things not to do in March. And we've got it all the way through. A little bit less to do in December and January, but we were able to come up with a few indoor suggestions on planting. But yeah, we really felt that people needed that step by step, and to really make it easier. Because I think once we leave them with a brand new landscape, oh, no, what are they, aside from watering, they know what to do. That first year, there's usually not much they need to do, but the next year, and then the next year, what do they do?
Right.
Um, and even lawns, we joke on the podcast that regardless of the topic, regardless of the person we're interviewing or the book we're talking about, someone will write in and ask about their lawn. Can I rake it? Can I fertilize it? that kind of thing. So that's our, and even on our, we are wrapping up the internet radio show, and just switching to just being a podcast. So we're a little bit in transition there for your listeners.
Right. Okay. Well, I'll make sure that we will share like where it is that everybody can hear
Mhm.
about the podcast or visit you. So, getting the book together, what was that? Just like all the years of information. Was it hard to compile all of that information, or was it like I'm just going to go to my old newsletters?
Well, we thought that. So
Oh,
my co-host and co-author Matthew Dressing. So yeah, we because we'd done 2 years of shows, so we had felt like we had all those show notes, and we had all my years of doing the newsletter, and I have a seasonal tips guide as well offered to people on my website. So we felt like, oh, we've got tons of content. This is going to be so easy. Well, it was a lot harder than we both thought. We
oh,
started in September and we thought, oh, January, February at the latest, we'll get this out. No problem. Oh, yeah, it was much harder. We got it out at the end of May, and that was really hard. Yeah, so it was a lot more work. I think pictures too were very, like, the visual was very important, and that was hard. And as much as we thought we had taken, I thought I had a pretty good database of pictures that I had taken over the years, but we still were short some photos, and we
mm,
were, had to do the tricky thing where we had to make winter look like spring,
yeah.
or spring look like winter, that type of thing. So yeah, so that was a lot of fun, but we did it and we're very proud of it. uh, and I've gotten great feedback from the people who have purchased it, that it is very helpful. And I think because it breaks it down by time, it really simplifies things, because that's all you have to worry about is what to do this month. You're not worrying about the whole season. You're not
Right.
going and this, just like you wouldn't go to the store in the spring and buy your spring fertilizer, your summer fertilizer, and your fall fertilizer all at the same time, right? Like that's just too much. It's overwhelming. You just want to know what you have to deal with in bite-sized pieces.
Right. Well, a couple of weeks ago, I had somebody who is, her name is Laura Connor, and she helps people to like, self-publish their books.
Mhm.
And I wanted to, and she was talking about how it's really great, for business owners, like to have a book. And I wanted to know, like, how is it that you use it in your business? Like, do you use it in your marketing? Where is it that you share that you have this book?
Well, mostly on the podcast. Yeah. So we have, that has been one thing that is, when you talk about your business, right? Managing, it's great to have diversity in the sense that I have the design business, I have the podcast, and I have the book. Um, but I occasionally apparently need to also sleep and feed my family. So there's not enough time in the day. So we are that's one of the reasons we're winding down the radio show and the Monday night commitment, so that we could spend some more time promoting the book. So that has been a bit of a challenge. I think we thought that it would kind of sell itself, and all the podcast listeners, 11,000 of them that apparently listen to us on Monday nights, would just run out and buy the book. But that didn't happen. So we I haven't done as good of a job, like, telling, I'm not a good bragger, and so when I see clients, I don't really say too much about it. But that's something where I'm really trying to work on, is to kind of talk about the book and promote it a bit more, because I really do think it is a valuable tool. And I almost wish, I mean, even contractors, that they something that they could give their clients, because they
Right.
too have clients that will call them back to plant things or move things, or something's died, and we need to figure out what happened. But I think if the more we can educate the homeowner on what's happening in their garden and when they have to do something or not do something, then we all win.
Right. So, Joanne, like I'm sure now is very busy. Like, thank you very much for making time to
Oh
be
no.
here. But so it's well, we're now into summer. I think we're 1 week
Yeah.
into summer. So, if you can describe like the highs, I don't want to say lows, but your busy seasons, and then
Hmm.
when are your not so busy seasons? And I'm always curious with those who are in industries where it's seasonal, like what do you do in those times
Hmm.
when it's like not as busy?
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, I think the spring has been traditionally, the busy time, although it has changed. COVID did, did change things in the sense that it never really did slow down because things were booking. The amount of people who wanted to work on their yards and the demand was so much so that it really continued. So there really wasn't a slowdown. And it used to be when I first started, people would call in February for a landscape design thinking that their landscape would get installed, in May or June because they were calling early in February. Well, yeah, that's not the case anymore. So I think everybody's catching on that the people who get the May and June coveted spots of first in spring, they're the ones that are booking in September, October. Right?
Wow.
So there is quite a lead time now built up, especially for quality work. It's a red flag. I always say to clients, like, if you call somebody and he can be here tomorrow, then that's a bit of a red flag. So yeah, so I think because of that lag, that has really helped me be able to be busier at what would typically be slower times of the year, let's say the fall.
Hmm.
It's certainly not as demanding as it is in the spring. I think the challenge with the spring is that it's overlap. It's the new designs that you're working on, but then last year's designs that may, have some questions and want to visit and check on a few things. And then the designs that were booked in the fall are being starting to be installed. So you kind of have
Right.
that. So I find that the May June challenge just in the sense that there's all these three streams kind of colliding, and you can only be everywhere at once, right? I do a lot of aftercare for my clients, so I'm on site with contractors. I usually handle the plants and picking the material, so there's lots to go into the job even after you're done with the design. There's lots of aspects. So picking rocks, picking pavers, picking ornamental trees, that type of thing. So I'm hoping I answered your question. So yes,
No,
and then when
yeah.
the really slow times, when it really, like, I think of December, January, then those are the times where you uh, fix your LinkedIn profile, or you tweak your website, or you take some courses. Landscape Ontario offers some great courses for all of us in the industry, so they tend to be in the winter as well. So there's never a shortage of something to do. Did I lose you?
Yep. Are you back there, Joanne?
I'm back. Are you back?
Okay, I'm still here. I don't panic
Oh,
anymore.
oh, good. Okay, I didn't know what to do.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I am wrapping up, but I just want to say that, I do remember that you took a course and you shared it on LinkedIn. So way to go, because it's always nice to see what's going on the back end. So
Mhm.
one of my last questions, Joanne, is when it comes to social media, because it's very visual what you do. What are your favorite platforms to be on?
I think Instagram is the most visual, and I'm not as great at making some of those amazing videos that some of my contractors are making, but they luckily tag me in them, so that's always good. So I feel like Instagram, and I think the hashtags, because even I use it for inspiration. If I'm getting stuck on like a front porch or a front yard, I can use those little hashtags and sort through and look for some inspiration. So my favorite, I feel bad though because we're on LinkedIn, Dee.
Okay.
But yes, I would say that the flexibility that Instagram has right now has been good.
Yeah, well, there are quite a few people who reach out to me to optimize their LinkedIn, and they love Instagram, but they want to. So I mean, there are like people with LinkedIn accounts, and they're getting to know LinkedIn, or they really love LinkedIn, but they just love the visual that you can
Yes.
do on Instagram, and even for their business, they show up a little bit differently. So there was no like wrong answer there,
Oh,
and
good.
I love scrolling through your Instagram feed and whatnot. So, almost one last question, Joanne. So, what would you say are the top lessons,
Ooh.
or yeah, what are the top lessons that people walk away with when they work with you? And then also, how would you say that your clients generally feel after working with you?
Wow. Um, I think they're thankful because I think I having somebody neutral and come into the project from at an early stage and that has the big picture. I think it really helps. The little questions that I ask are often things that they don't think about. And sometimes they're silly things like, often couples debate about the location of the shed. Well, what when you're if you're standing out at the sink, which we spend a lot of time at the sink, what do you want to look out at? Do you want to look at our garden, or do you want to look at the shed? And so often they'll be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. So
Yeah,
I feel that those little things, also the views from the house. We live in Canada, we are in the house a lot of the year, so planning for visuals to look out at from your patio doors, your kitchen, you're sitting at your kitchen all year, even in the winter. So making sure there's like whether it's privacy, whether it's something visually interesting to look at. So planning, so those types of things that aren't, people will come to me for A, but when I mention B, C, and D, they're all like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. So I think that's what they're thankful for, is that I have the insight and the experience to look beyond just their immediate issue, their immediate pain point, and look at other things also.
yeah. Well, as a former client, Joanne, like I'm very thankful, and my husband is very thankful. Like I would say, he didn't really. He was just like, "I'm going to mow the lawn." Like that
Yeah.
was about having a garden. He's just going to mow the lawn. But my goodness, like he is just taking a look at the grass. He can tell me about different types of grass. He's just picking things, and so even like the way he's acting, so it's like we really love our garden, so
Oh,
that's a
that's
feeling that
great.
we walked away from.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Definitely. Yeah, transforming their space, right? And functional. It's not all about the beauty, it is about function too. Some things like water features and gazebos and different views, trees, large trees. So people want to be, want their yards. I think more now more than ever. It was certainly that way during COVID, but I think it's continued, and I think it will continue, as that people want to see their outdoor spaces like an extension of their homes.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. So Joanne, do you have any promotions going on right now that you'd like to share?
Well, our book is available on Amazon, so I would like everybody to check it out and Google that for us. It's again Down the Garden Path, a step by step to your Ontario garden. So please check that out. No real promotions. We are planning. We looks like we are going to be on Global. I didn't even tell you this. I know
What?
tomorrow, Friday morning at 6:50.
Oh, I'll be up.
6:50. I know. Will you be up on doing a little? They could only handle one of us in the studio, so Matt is going to be in the studio. So talking a little bit about the book and about summer gardening tips. So that's our biggest thing to exciting right now to talk about. Yeah, and we'd
Oh,
love
yeah.
people to like, there's so much great content. That's a nice thing about a podcast, and a gardening podcast especially, because the content is evergreen. So we'd love for you to check out on your favorite podcast app or on our website. So my website is down2earth.ca with the number 2,
Yes,
and
thank you for
yeah,
spelling that.
number 2.ca, and there's tons of content in there. So if you're looking for something specific, I've got a lovely little search bar. You can look up that topic. So yeah, I did the radio show for 9 years, and we turned it into a podcast 3 years ago, or 6 years ago. So it's been a podcast for 6 years, and a garden radio show before that. So there's a lot of content on the internet to help you with your garden and landscape. And we've interviewed lots of guests and lots of authors and lots of professionals in their industry. So yeah.
Okay, well, thank you so much. So I'm trying to be part of the 5 a.m. club. So I
Oh,
know
are
that
you? Oh,
oh
oh,
yeah, I've been doing it. Unfortunately, I've been getting about 4:30. Then I just stay like on my pillow.
oh my
But
gosh.
what I'm trying to say is that I'll be able to tune in
Okay.
to the global news report. So I look forward to watching that. So Joanne, how is it? Well, actually, no, you did mention your website. It's down to earth with down to earth. One more time, down to earth.
Down2Earth.ca with the number two. So down number two earth.ca. And yeah, and so you can find me on Instagram as well as down to earth underscore official, which you helped me with. And our podcast has its own social media as well, on Instagram, Down the Garden Path Podcast.
Great.
Yeah,
And I'm always a believer in repurposing content. So
that's right.
everyone, you're going to be able to replay this on here on LinkedIn. And this, Joanne, is going to be going up on YouTube, and I'll be sharing it on my website again with some links as well, the links to your book. So thank you
Excellent.
again, Joanne, for
Thank
being
you.
my guest. And I'll see you like outside of the screen
You
very
will.
soon.
You will. You'll see you soon.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Joanne.
Bye.